They were on the highway hitchhiking, trying to get a ride to the local beach in Stewart off the coast of Florida.
And I abused the prisoners. They were not raped or sexually assaulted or anything like that. I told them that they were leaving themselves open to be murdered, abused, and all that, running away with no money, no visible means of support. What are you going to do? How are you going to make a living? And they just laughed. You know, you're going to sell drugs, you're going to sell pussy. What are you going to do? You got to put food in your mouth.
Now, I know we all know the old saying that cops are here to protect and serve. And no matter if you disagree with that statement or not, can we all just agree that there is a necessity for them? I mean, either to keep the status quo and or to stop and prevent future crimes from happening. And with that expectation, they have the lure of provision and safety amongst the general public. But what happens when they are the predators? When they have the resources and just the knowledge of the law and the workings of it, does that give them an edge over most of the predators out there? What's up, you guys? Yo, welcome back to my channel. And like I say always, I understand how valuable time is, and I understand how precious it is for you guys. So hopefully, I don't waste you guys' time with this video. But before we get into the video, what I do here is just that I regurgitate interesting stories that I come across, and hopefully, you guys find them interesting as well. So much that you guys can like, comment, and subscribe if you like this sort of content. And if you didn't know you like this sort of content and you find yourself here at the end of the video, then like, comment, and subscribe, please. It goes a long way. But with that being said, let's jump straight into this video. Known as a killer cop, a hangman, and a self proclaimed serial killer, Jared John Schaefer was in prison in 1973 for murders he committed while serving on the police force. Now, though he was convicted of only 2 murders, he was suspected of committing many more. Jared was born in Wisconsin on March 25th, 1946, the oldest of 3 children. And his father, Jared John, was a traveling salesman. His mother, Doris Marie Schaefer, was a homemaker. First, Jared was raised in Nashville, Tennessee, later Atlanta, Georgia, where he attended the Marcus Academy until his family permanently relocated to Fort Lauderdale, Florida in 1960. He would later describe his upbringing to one of his psychiatrists as turbulent and conflictual, and referred to himself as the illegitimate child. He described his father as a verbally abusive alcoholic, adulterous, and he was barely home due to his frequent business trips. And when he was home, he would find anything he could do just to get out the house. And in that absence, guided Jared on his own path of trouble. By the age of 12, he started to experiment with acts of bondage and sadomasochism, which just means getting a sexual gratification from inflicting physical pain or humiliation to either yourself or somebody else. And he would tie himself up to a tree, get excited sexually, and then he would do things to hurt himself. And around the same time, he began to masturbate and fantasize about hurting other people, in particular, women. Jared also recalled discovering women's underwear, and he would sometimes wear them, and at the same time, he would try to hurt himself. He thought back to his childhood games and how he always wanted to kill himself or just be the person who died. Convinced that his father favored his sister, Jared secretly wanted to be a girl. In thinking that he was such a disappointment to his family as a kid, and most importantly, his father, And not having pleased his father to his liking fueled the feelings of wanting to die, and the games gave him those opportunities. On the other hand, Jared was close to his mother, who was extremely protective of her children, but she failed to give him the type of attention he needed. And the more his father stayed distant, the more and more Jared introverted himself. As Jared got older, he started to develop this keen interest into nature, and he preferred to do outdoor activities. But his primary interests included collecting guns, hunting, and fishing activities. And those fishing activities would be his and his father's occasional time together when his dad was at home and when he chose to spend time with him. But Jared mostly stayed to himself and did mostly everything solo, leading his family and his peers to think that he wanted to be some sort of a outdoorsman who inspired to be a forest ranger. And by his mid-teens, he started to have erotic fantasies about hurting women, the sadomasochism, and bondage, and that feeling would increase in frequency and in intensity every time he would submit himself to this type of torture. It got so bad at times that it would be the only thing he thought of. It was like it dominated his life. And along with the habits of cross dressing, Jared started to be known as a peeping Tom. Now, one of his former classmates, Barbara Corlick, was quoted saying she couldn't remember Jared having any friends and that he was always the person on the outside looking in. And she also remembered that she would tuck her skirt between her legs because Jared would get down on all hands and knees just to look at the girl's underwear. And despite all his social problems, he was a good student. I mean, he started on the varsity football team when he was a junior and a sophomore. He did a little bit of golfing, and his teachers considered him to be a promising student, whatever that is. He graduated high school in 1964 and enrolled in Broward Community College in Florida. Now, that following fall, he started to major in social studies, but he later switched that to just general teaching. He also got accepted to Florida Atlantic University with the aspirations to get his Bachelor of Arts in Education. In December 1968, he married a younger student named Martha Fogg, but that would last briefly due to him spending most of his time hunting, and when he was at home, all he wanted to do is just have sex in like strange yo. And not to paint this man in any worse than what he's already is, but given the fact that what we know about his torture sessions, these fantasies, these cross-dressing, one could only imagine what this woman went through and what she was asked to do. But nevertheless, they got divorced 2 years later after the saying the precious words "I do," with Martha claiming extreme cruelty. Later on, Jared tried to become a priest, but he was turned away by the St. John's Seminary because he didn't have enough faith. And that was probably true because after that rejection, he quit the Catholic Church. I mean, he just gave it up, and he's not atheist. You know how that goes. Um, his next goal was to be what he went to school for, and that's a teacher. In March 1969, he got an internship at Plantation High School in Plantation, Florida. And let me just stop this right here. This ain't nothing. This ain't about race at all. But that's a fucked up name for a school in a city. I mean, they can change that, right? Like, I'm not offended at all. I have no problem with it. It's just fucked up. But let's get on with the story. Now, his teaching didn't last long due to him wanting to instill American values like honesty, purity, unselfishness, love, along with his own little political views into the students. And just a short month after he started the internship, he was fired. Now, just 4 months after the split, Jared got another job at Stranahan High School as a geography teacher. That didn't last long either. I mean, due to both arrogance and the lack of geographical knowledge. And he was ultimately let go 2 months after his appointment. And one of his supervisors, Richard Goodhart, recalled telling Jared that he'd better not let him hear him trying to get another job with any type of authority over anyone because he would do anything to prevent it. So that following summer, after being fired, Jared took a few weeks off just to recuperate in Europe and in North Africa. And he planned on coming home with a new goal in mind, like to reinvent himself, to start a new life. So if he couldn't be a priest, if he couldn't be a teacher, how about a cop? Now, he applied to several police departments. He got rejected from a few, including Broward County Sheriff's Office, after failing a few psychological tests. But you know what they say? If one won't hire you for psychological reasons, the other one will. I don't know. I don't know if they say that. This is not, look, I don't have nothing against cops. That was wrong. That was wrong. I take it back. It was stupid. Never mind. To Jared's credit, he didn't let them know he was fired from his teaching jobs, and he falsely claimed that he was a research analyst at Florida Atlantic University. Along with that, he told the lie that he recently moved back into the States from Morocco. And with his past not being able to be verified, the Florida Walton Minor Police Department hired him. And just 6 months after getting his new job, he was remarried to another woman named Teresa Deem, whom Jared says was an angel. It was great because she would give in to his sexual demands and fantasies, and they both shared this deep love for fishing. In March 1972, Jared earned a commendation for his role in a drug bust, but 1 month later, he was fired. Now, his supervisor, Chief Bernard Scott, later said Jared didn't have 1 ounce of common sense, stating that Jared had a habit of stopping women who had already had minor traffic violations. He will also run their license plate number in the department's computer, getting their information and later calling them for dates. That's weird. Like, that's crazy. He's doing all this while he's still married. So at this point, Jared desperately needed a job. And I know what I said about, one don't hire you, the other one will, about the cops. I was joking. Like, really, I was. But this story is awkward. It really is, because in June, just 2 months after he was let go, he was hired by the Martin County Sheriff's Department in Florida, like the same state. And again, to Jared's credit, he forged a letter of recommendation from his recent supervisor. And plus, his background check was still squeaky clean. I mean, what else? What more would you want to ask for? Like, the due diligence, maybe? No. You don't want to give a call? No. You don't want to see if it's true? No, none of that. None of that. But anyway, if you're following the trend of this story, then you know what comes next. And not having his job for a month, he does another stupid thing. But this stupid thing was a big stupid thing. On July 21st, 1972, Jared picked up two hitchhikers, a 17-year-old named Paula Wells and an 18-year-old named Nancy Trotter. Now, they were on the highway hitchhiking, trying to get a ride to the local beach in Stewart off the coast of Florida.
And I abused the prisoners. They were not raped or sexually assaulted or anything like that. I told them that they were leaving themselves open to be murdered, abused, and all that, running away with no money, no visible means of support. What are you going to do? How are you going to make a living? And they just laughed. You know, you're going to sell drugs, you're going to sell pussy. What are you going to do? You got to put food in your mouth.
He told them that hitchhiking was illegal in Martin County and then drove them to their desired location. But before arriving to the city, they told him about their plans on going to another beach not far away from that location called Jensen Beach. And Jared would do the polite thing as a gentleman, maybe. He offered to meet the girls the next morning when he was off duty, and he would drive them to the beach himself, you know, so they won't have to hitchhike because it's dangerous. And so the girls agreed to meet this nice young police officer the next morning at 9:15 a.m. And Jared showed up the next morning in plain clothes in an unmarked vehicle, which initially made the girls suspicious, but he told them that he was simply in between undercover duties and there was nothing to worry about. And being a cop, that eased these girls' suspicion and they got into the car. And not long after driving off, they noticed Jared wasn't going to Jensen Beach, but instead he drove to a swampy, secluded area on Hutchinson Island off the state road. He started to make sexual remarks, and then he drew a gun on the girls and told the girls that he planned on selling them as white slaves.
And I said, show you how easy it would be. You know, here you are under arrest. I know a guy who'll buy a young girl. Hell, I know 5 or 6 of them that would buy a young girl and make her into a whore. I mean, this is nothing new.
And before forcing them out of the car, he handcuffed and gagged both girls. He then separated the girls and tied them to different trees. He tied their legs to the trunk of the tree just below their knees and then put a noose around their neck, which he secured on a branch to force them to balance themselves on the exposed roots of the tree just as a counter pressure for the noose. If they slipped or fell, they risked the chance of hanging themselves.
Oh yeah, ha 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 ha. You think it's so funny? Well, we'll just tie you over here to this tree, and we'll tie you over to this tree, and I'll leave and I'll bring somebody back and sell you. Well, I didn't. I tied them to the tree, but...
He told the girls that he was going to grape and murder them. And right before he started to act on his words, he received an urgent radio dispatch telling him to report to the police station. And when Jared returned 2 hours later, he would find that the girls had indeed escaped. And then he drove home and called the station to inform Sheriff Richard Crowder, saying he had done something foolish and that he had overdone his job. Jared told his supervisor that he was just trying to scare the girls out of hitchhiking for their own good. And immediately after talking to Jared, Sheriff Crowder and a lieutenant named Melvin Waldron got into patrol cars and went looking for Paula and Nancy. And after Nancy and Paula escaped, being scared and running for their lives, somehow they got separated from each other. And Sheriff Crowder would find Nancy limping onto the road trying to get his attention. And when they finally got to her, they informed her that Paula was picked up just 30 minutes prior to them getting to her.
I didn't go and get anybody and sell them. I just wanted to give them a scare. And of course that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I was trying to impress on them the dangerousness of their situation, running around. They were nice kids, you know. I didn't want to see them end up in a ditch.
But he was fired on the spot, charged with false imprisonment and 2 counts of aggravated assault. But he was released 2 weeks later on a $15,000 bond. At trial in November 1972, he pled guilty to one assault charge and the other counts were dropped. He was sentenced to a year in jail with the possibility of parole after doing 6 months, followed by 3 years of probation. And when Jared was leaving the courthouse, he was recorded saying that he had made a stupid mistake, but at least no sex was involved and no one got hurt. And while in jail, 2 other girls were reported missing from the same neighborhood. On September 27th, 1972, while Schaefer was free on bond pending trial, a 17-year-old named Suzanne Place and a 16-year-old named Georgia Jessup had vanished from Fort Lauderdale. Susan's parents said the girls were at her house the night prior with a man in his 20s, and his name was Jerry Shepard. And they were on their way to a local beach just to listen to music, play the guitar, and just hang out. Now, the girls and Jerry left the house at 8:45 p.m. and never came back. They were gone for 4 days before Susan's mother called Georgia's mother to see if she had heard anything. And to her surprise, Georgia's mother informed her that her daughter had ran away, or so she thought. Lucille, Suzanne's mother, had written down Jared's license plate number along with a description of his blue and green Datsun that he drove at that particular time. And it was on March 25th, 1973, that the investigators traced the license plate back to Jared. And at that time, he was already in jail for assaulting the prior two young ladies. Jared denied any contact with Suzanne and Georgia, but the case began to unravel on April 1st, 1973, when skeletal remains found on Hutchinson Island by 3 men collecting aluminum cans. And 4 days later, the girls were identified by their dental records. Now, detectives said that the evidence from the crime scene indicated that the 2 girls were tied up, along with Suzanne being shot in the mouth. And on April 7th, the police searched the home of Jared's mother, where he had items personally stored in a spare bedroom. Evidence recovered in that search was a stash of women's jewelry plus 100 pages of sketches and writing depicting mutilation and murders of young women. He also had newspaper clippings about 2 women missing since 1969 and pieces of ID belonging to 2 missing girls, Claudette Goodenough and Barbara Wilcox, both 19 years of age. The 2 girls was last seen that year, January 8th, before Jared was sent to jail in Martin County. And while their skeletal remains were found in early 1977, no cause of death could be determined and no charges were filed. As for the news clippings, they refer to a February 1969 disappearance of a waitress named Carmen Hawlock, and items of her jewelry were found in Jared's room, along with a gold-filled tooth identified by Carmen's dentist, but again, no charges were filed. Another woman named Leah Benendez had been a neighbor of Jared when she disappeared in September 1969. He also complained about her taunting him by taking off her clothes with her curtains open, and a piece of her jewelry were found amongst the things that Jared collected. Leah's skeletal remains were finally recovered in 1968, and once again, no charges could be filed. Now, more jewelry linked Jared to the disappearances of a 14-year-old named Maria Barcelona, who vanished from the Broward County with a 13-year-old named Elsa Farmer in October 1973. 1972. Now, their skeletal remains were found in 1973, but again, no cause of death could be determined and no charges could be filed. It's like it's a pattern, it's a trend. This story has trends. And even with all that evidence stored away for safekeeping or memorabilia, Jared was only charged for 2 murders. And Jared would try to appeal his case about like 20 times, but they were all rejected by various states and federal courts. And Jared insisted his actions was just art, but the police and prosecutors described them as just vain descriptions of actual crimes. On January 20th, 1991, Jared sat down and drew up a list of about 80 victims. And then the next day, he claimed there were at least 110. But over 8 years in over 3 continents, who really knows? Like, who really knows? Now, he goes on to say that he had one woman who drowned in her own vomit while watching him disembowel her girlfriend. And he wasn't sure if that counted as a valid kill. He also said others were pregnant and he didn't know if they counted as 1 or 2 kills. I mean, this dude's a piece of shit. Like, he's a piece of shit. But Jared's luck ran out on December 3rd, 1995, when another inmate barged into his cell and slashed Jared's throat and stabbed both of his eyes out. Prison officials named the killer Vincent Rivera, serving life plus 20 years for 2 murders he committed in Tampa, Florida. But no specific motive was offered on why he killed Jared. But one, I can guess. I mean, like, literally, I understand there's a lot of men in prison locked up that did a lot of bad things that put them in prison. But I know that there's a general consensus to the most heinous crimes, and that include the young, the adolescent, the innocent. And plus, you're going around parading and bragging about it. I wouldn't imagine. I can only imagine that he was not liked. Like, what would you do if you knew him? If you got morals and ethics. I don't know. And Shirley Jessup, the mother of Georgia Jessup, said that Jared's murder was a simple case of overdue justice, and that she would like to send a present to the guy who killed him, followed with she believed that he was going to get his anyway. She just wished it had been a little bit sooner than later. And I agree. So that's all I got. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Look, leave a like in a comment, or leave a like in a comment. But yo, give me a comment. How y'all like this story? What do you guys think of this story? About the question that I proposed to you guys earlier. What happens when these perceived safety figures, the peace officers, become the opposite? When they are the predators. Let me know in the comments. And like I said, if you're still here, you're not subscribed, please subscribe. I got more coming on the way. And hopefully I didn't waste you guys' time. So share this video, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until next time, you guys, peace.